I went on and graduated. I was on the dean's list, and so I went to University of Cincinnati, and I came in as a freshman majoring in physical education, and I got there, and you couldn't play as freshman back when I got there, so I played with my great friend Ron Bonham. He was Mr. Indiana at the time, and I was Mr. Illinois. And so we played freshman ball together, and we both averaged 20-some points a game, didn't lose a game. So then we come up as sophomores, and I said Bonham could shoot, and he was a scorer. So I could shoot, I could score, I told you. But I decided, make that decision that I tell you kids about. I decided I could rebound, I could block shots, I could play defense, and I could score. Well, Ron, everybody used to like, he could flat out score, and he would wave at you on defense. But so I decided, well, he's not gonna start if he start, I'm gonna start as sophomores. So sure enough, we got up sophomore. Again, we're talking 1962, and at that time, University of Cincinnati had 3 black players, Tony Yates, Tom Thacker, and Paul Hogue, when they beat Ohio State the first time in '61. So now, guess what? When I start, I will be the 4th black player. And so, with my coach Ed Jucker, which I think as my second dad, and I always love him, God rest his soul, he told, he knew what was happening to start me, in the Missouri Valley and start us. So he waited till the holiday festival in New York during Christmas. And we went up for that tournament. That's when he started. Ron Bonham at one forward, George Wilson at the other forward. Now Tom Thacker's playing guard with Tony Yates. So it was Tom Thacker, Tony Yates at guards, Ron Bonham, Paul Hogue, and George Wilson. So we won the holiday festival. Then we came on back to start the Missouri Valley. Well, guess what, folks? Didn't anybody notice that there was 4 black players? And to this day, I guarantee you can't find too many that went to UCL at that age bracket or near there will ever tell you that we had 4 black players. They'll say, oh, that '62 team that had Thacker and Yates and Bonham and Wilson and Hogue? That's the way they always addressed us. So anyway, we went on and won. And then after we won, I had a good year. My junior, we should have won 3 in a row. But once again, what I tell you about those people with the striped shirts on, when we played Loyola Chicago, and I was watching that film not too long ago, and some things happened in that film that I remember that cost us 3 in a row. And I was picked to play on the 1963 Pan American team. They had a tryout in Kansas City. Tom Thacker, Tony, and myself were chosen to go out to the tryouts in Kansas City for the '63 Pan American team. We went out and tried out, came back home. I got a phone call the next week, and the gentleman told me I was picked as one of the team to play on the Pan American team. So I was all happy. And then I hung up. That Monday, I looked and found out that the Pan American games were in San Pablo, Brazil, and they were in the middle of May down in San Pablo, Brazil. And young folks, my brain came and said, wait a minute, all my finals in college as my junior year are in May. So instead of not sure, I got on the telephone. I called that gentleman. I said, sir, I'm proud that I made the Pan American team, but I'm going to have to decline of playing because those are my finals, and I want to be eligible my senior year. So I want to pass, and I was on the dean's list, and so I declined to be on the Pan American team. And to this day, I laugh because you know who took my place on that Pan American team? A gentleman and a ball player named Willis Reed. The Willis Reed took my place on that Pan American team. So when I graduated from University of Cincinnati, that was 1964, and the Olympics happened to be that year. As you can see, I have one of my Olympic hats on now, and I had a chance to go to the Olympics, just like my hero, Oscar and Bill Russell. Well, guess what, folks? They had the Olympic trials, and they had, I think, 12 teams to come to New York to try out to make the Olympic team. And I'm all excited, and they didn't call me. I'm an All-American. I'm all Missouri Valley. I don't won a national championship, but I didn't get a call. They called my teammate, who was a great scorer, and he deserved it, Ron Bonham. So they asked Ron to come to the Olympic trial, and Ed Jucker, my second dad, he was so upset. He called whoever he was called and found out, how can you not choose Wilson? He's an All-American. He's led the Missouri Valley in this and team in this, and it's fine for Bonham, but and the guy told him, well, we didn't get Wilson and Bonham because people would think we're being, favorites, getting two ball players from the same college. So he said, so anyway, Coach Jucker, he wouldn't call some other people, none of that. So now, young folks, as I was telling you again, what do I do? Do I get mad? I'm not mad at Bonham, because he should have been there. So I said, oh well, I just let it go. So I went on and started studying and getting ready to, graduate and all that. I got a phone call. Luckily, I had a phone in my room. Luckily, I was in the room at the time. My friend MC Thompson, my high school teammate, called me and said one of their ball players got hurt that weekend practicing, and they're going to an AAU tournament in Denver, Colorado. Now, and back in those days, AAU was almost as big as the NCAA. So I said, oh yeah. I asked me to come because I used to play with them in the summer when I went home, and they were AAU team. So I knew most of the guys. And so I said, yeah. So I made that commitment. Well, as you know what happened, 3 days later, 2 or 3 days later, the guy from the Olympic trials called me and wanted me to go to New York to take the place of a guy named Gary Bragg from Ohio State, because he got hurt. He got hit over the eye, and he couldn't continue on the team. So I sat there, folks. Now listen to this closely. Since I didn't get a chance to go, now what do you say about you get a second chance? And the guy just called me and said, I get a second chance. I thought about it, and I told him, no, sir, I can't go, because I made a commitment to my buddy and my ex-teammate, MC Thompson, playing AAU. So I turned him down. And here I went and played with the AAU, and we went to Denver, and lo and behold, we could beat the first game of the tournament. So what happened? They were getting beat real bad, and since I was just a substitute, they just threw me in there in the last quarter or whatever. Well, I don't like to lose, so I started pressing up in that altitude up in Denver, showed them how to do it, and so we came back and almost, won. We only got beat by 7 or 8. I can't remember the number. And so, I stayed there in Denver and watched the rest of the game. And lo and behold, guess who made one of the All-Star teams? They had 2 All-Star teams. One called the Stars and one called the Stripes. Out of all those AAU, well, I made the Stars, and my teammate MC, he made the Stripes. And guess where those 2 teams were going? They were going to the Olympic trials in New York City. we won the whole tournament. And that night they had to select the United States Olympic team. So that night they selected the team, and as it turned out, Larry Brown, who's coach Larry Brown, a guy named Dick Davies, and they all played with Akron Goodyear AAU, a guy named Pete McCafferty, AAU, Jerry Shipp, and yours truly, George Wilson, since I had 20 rebounds in the championship game. We were the first 5 picked on the 1964 Olympic team. So Bill Bradley and Joe Caldwell, Jeff Mullins, Luke Jackson, Bad News Bonds, Mel Counts, and they all came from those other teams. And that was the 64 Olympic team. Well, guess what? They decided to tell everybody that we might be the first Olympic team to lose a game in the Olympics. Well, you know, George, I don't like to hear that kind of stuff. So I showed them the paper. I said, well, we're not going to be the first. And sure enough, we went to practice in Hawaii with the rest of the Olympic team. Went on over to Tokyo, whooped up on everybody, and that was during the Cold War. And we beat Russia for the Olympic gold medal in 1964. Well, once I made the Olympic team, we came back. We all went to Hawaii and practice. And people said, why you go to Hawaii to practice? Well, the Olympics was in Tokyo, Japan. First time it had ever been out of the Americas. The Olympics was always in Europe or in America. First time ever in the Far East. So we got to Tokyo and got off the plane. They had everything. They had done a wonderful job. They could put us on buses. They took us to our hotel. And they had built, barracks, villages. Each country had their own village where they stayed, where they ate, where everything was in a village. And you could go and visit everybody in every village except one. And that was the Italian village. Nobody could go in there except Italians. Everybody said, why not? Well, Italians, they have a habit of drinking wine at different meals. Being an athlete or not, they drink wine. So we couldn't go in there because they didn't want us to maybe accidentally participate in drinking some wine with one of the Italians. So we couldn't go in there. So anyway, we went to practice every day, and then we started our schedule. And then, of course, the paper kept saying we might be the first team to lose. And I kept showing the papers, we won, we won, we won. And then we got to the semifinals. Well, Russia, Brazil, Yugoslavia, and one other, they were all pretty good teams at that time. So we get in there, and I am very famous for helping us get that gold medal because I was playing, I could play forward or I could play center. So this night, I went in and substituted as a forward, and we playing Yugoslavia. And if you look on the records, we only won by 8 points, the lowest number in the whole tournament, 8 points. Well, we playing Yugoslavia, and I go in the game in the last quarter because I guess one of the guys had gotten in foul trouble, so they put me in as a forward. So I came in the game, and Larry Brown dribbled the ball. He gave me the ball. Now the play is I get the ball, and I throw it in to Luke Jackson, who was a very good center. So I go to throw the ball into Luke Jackson. My forward got off of me and went backed up and got in front of double team Luke Jackson. So then I went to throw the ball back to Larry Brown. That guard then got in front and cut Larry Brown off. Then I look over in the corner at the clock, and it was going down less than 10 seconds. So what happened? He left me no choice, no selection. So what I did, I dribbled 2 or 3 times, shot that jump shot, bang, bottom of the net. Now remember this now. We only leading about 4 points when I took that jump shot. So then we keep going back and forth. So we come back again. They throw me the ball. Dick Davies was the other guard. He threw me the ball. I went to throw it in to Luke again. Well, they backed up again. And then the other guy cut Dick Davis off, so I couldn't give him the ball back. So I looked at the clock again. I said, oh, said to myself, you didn't believe that, huh? Then shot that jump shot, bottom of the net. So we go up by 8. So yours truly, in my opinion, that if I had missed that first jump shot when we were only up 4 points, I might not be here talking and could finish the rest of the story. And the guys loved me, boy. They hugged me. And so if you look at the score, so then after we did that, we had Russia for the gold medal. We killed them. We beat them 15 points or so. So that's how George Wilson, Oscar Robertson, and Bill Russell, my heroes, all have Olympic gold medal. Came back after the Olympics and was picked #1 by the Cincinnati Royals to play in the NBA. I came to the Royals, and again, I played center or forward. And now nowadays, the young folks that get these big $1 million contracts, I can let you know I was one of the ones that took less money because they didn't pay us back in that day. Even the great Oscar Robertson, nobody made 6 figures back in those days. Wilt was the first one, but they just didn't pay. So, and it's, we made all right, but not the kind of money you're talking now. And I remember I was a first-round draft choice. So, so as it happens, I went on, played, and then I got married, and that's why I had a good year in '64. I graduated in '64. I went to the Olympics in '64. I got married in '64. I got in the NBA in '64. So if anybody see my card, they'll see GW 64. That's why I had a great year. And so then, I got married to my wife, and then we had 2 boys, Derek and Brian. And then I played on all those teams, the Bulls. And a lot of people say, why you play on so many teams? Well, I was fortunate enough to be around the NBA when they expanded. What most of you all don't know is when I came out in '64, there were only 9 NBA teams, and there were only 10 players on the team. They kept one around in case they need somebody for practice. So then they started expanding with the Chicago Bulls in '66. So I was the one chosen off the Royals to go to the Bulls. I was the original Chicago Bull. The next year, they expanded to Seattle and San Diego. Well, Al Bianchi was the coach with Johnny Kerr of the Bulls. He went to Seattle. Well, of course, he took me back, took me with him, because remember, I could play forward, I could play center, and I didn't make a lot of money. And I didn't cause any problems. All right, so then, after playing in Seattle, and I love Seattle, that was a wonderful part of the country. Then they expanded to the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. Well, guess what? Johnny Kerr left Chicago Bulls, went to the Phoenix Suns. He took me back to the Phoenix Suns. So I was the original Phoenix Sun starter. And then about the end of 10 games in the season, I turned my ankle. And then next thing I knew, I was headed to Philadelphia. And I love Philadelphia because Jack Ramsey was a coach and general manager. And I was there for 2 years. And then I had my second son, Brian. He was born there. And then so I stayed there 2 years, and then they expanded again. And then that's when Cleveland Cavaliers and the Buffalo Braves came. Well, they took me to Buffalo Braves. I went to the Buffalo Braves, started, played, had a good year, and then went camp that next year. And all of a sudden I get a phone call at home saying I was put on waivers. And they went out on exhibition. And I was like, how can you do that? So make a long story short, I took care of it. And so I tell them, never mind, get me back. So I came on back to Cincinnati, started to work, I had my degree. And so I had a wonderful career, as in college. and Olympics and in the NBA. So I don't have any complaints. Came on back, went to work, and here I am now, 70, almost 78 years old, and a lot of wonderful memories. Now, to end this, I want to thank my buddy Jeff for coming over to my house and my museum and giving me an opportunity to tell the rest of the world about George Wilson. Over the years, as you could heard from all my stories, I've had some very good things that happened, and I made things happen, and I made great decisions. And I want to thank my mom and my stepfather and Jimmy and Freddie and Miss Dampier and even my girlfriend back in the day for keeping me together, and all my friends at John Marshall High School, Marshall Commandos, the students, all my teammates back in those days that I still take, because there's not many of us left. There are only 3 left on the 58 team, and I think we've lost about 3 or 4 from the 1960 team. So again, I want to thank you for coming over, giving me this opportunity to tell you about this USA George Wilson. Thank you.